All right. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for today's Fireside Chat. To get things started, please welcome Chris Hessler, the Virginia Forward Finance Chair.
Thank you, Peter, and welcome everyone to Forward Party in Virginia's monthly Fireside Chat. You can tell from the sidebar chat, we've got folks from all around the state, not just Virginia, country rather, not just Virginia joining us. So welcome to everybody. We will be focusing a little bit on Virginia business at the end of the conversation. So please stick around for that. On behalf of everyone on the Virginia team, I want to thank Andrew Yang for making time to join us for tonight's conversation. We're all looking forward to his thoughts and his insights. What brings us together tonight is a shared concern for the health of our democracy. The legacy parties have established single-party bastions across the nation where only one of them is competitive. 70% of our 500,000 elected offices in this country go uncontested. And in every form of human endeavor, competition is the source of innovation, results, and accountability. So Forward is building a national platform to bring competition back to our elections. A lot of people like to refer to us as a third party, but that's not what we want to be. What we're trying to be is a second party. We're trying to give voters real choices in the general election, whether that's running against Republicans, running against Democrats, it doesn't matter. Forward Party is trying to make sure that when voters show up in November, they've got real options. Last year, we supported more than 125 candidates nationwide. And in Virginia, we're challenging the status quo too. We're speaking up for democracy. We're using our voice. If you haven't already seen our most recent statement against the abuse of government power to intimidate Virginia residents, please go on our website and check that out. But we need to do more, obviously, than just use our voice. We're running candidates. Last year, we endorsed 8 candidates statewide. We ran our first 2 Virginia Forward candidates in Arlington. And in Waynesboro, we came just a couple hundred votes shy of getting a Forward endorsed candidate on the city council. This year in 2025, we are focused on the state legislative elections. We are one of 2 states in the country that does off-cycle elections for the state legislature, and we'll be announcing our slate of candidates for 2025 very soon. So I'm looking forward to that. In 2026, we are keeping our eye on building the infrastructure to get to 2026. It is our goal to have at least one congressional candidate running as a Forward Party candidate in this state. So we can't do that without building the infrastructure we need to support that person or those people. We are all looking forward to the discussion that we're going to have in just a minute, but how you react to this discussion, what you choose to do after tonight's call, that's the only thing that will make tonight meaningful. Tonight should be so much more than just a stimulating hour. Tonight should be about citizens actively changing the direction of our country. The Forward Party cannot do this work without your involvement. So if you're in Virginia, during the call, go to our website, sign up for the Forward Party if you haven't already done that, volunteer to help one of our great candidates or become a candidate yourself. But most importantly, and perhaps most easily, you can contribute. We cannot get our message out. We can't help our candidates without contributions. If you like what you hear tonight, if you like what Forward Party is trying to do in Virginia, please go on our website and make a donation. You can make a difference tonight. We are celebrating soon the nation's 250th birthday. And so Virginia is asking you, and Peter, I think you have a QR code that we can use. Oh, that's later. We'll bring that up at the end. We're asking for a $250 donation to celebrate the nation's upcoming birthday, or a recurring donation of $25, or a recurring donation of $20.26 to celebrate next year. Abraham Lincoln said in the Gettysburg Address that it is for us, when he was talking about the commemoration of the graveyard in Gettysburg, he said it's not our job to just remember the dead. It's for us, the living, to be dedicated to the unfinished work which they who fought here have so nobly advanced. That's his challenge through the ages to us. We are here and we have an opportunity to do something to change the direction of our democracy. So please join us. Please help us do that. Now, I will bring on Sophia A. Nelson. Sophia is our state vice chair for communication. She is our spokeswoman. Her face will be familiar to many of you. She is a CNN commentator and a former MSNBC commentator on legal and political matters. Sophia is also a columnist for Forbes and the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. She writes great columns. If you haven't read them, please do. She's a former congressional committee counsel. She's a best-selling author of 4 nonfiction books. I can heartily recommend to everyone on this call tonight. Each blurb is one. It is exactly a book at the moment. And lastly, she is an award-winning journalist and a global women's speaker, and she's my friend. Sophia, thank you so much for leading us.
Hey, Chris, thank you for that very kind introduction. And thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. Before I get into my discussion with Andrew Yang, who's our co-founder of the Forward Party, I'd like to kind of set the table for you a little bit leading into that discussion. Think Oprah, when Oprah does her one-on-one sits down. That's what Andrew and I are going to do tonight. We're going to have an Oprah-style chat here. We started Fireside Chats because simply we wanted you to get to know us, the Forward Party of Virginia, and the National Party. And we wanted to engage the citizens of our great Commonwealth as well as our nation. So thank you to all who joined us tonight. I want to also say a special thank you to our CEO, Lindsay Draft, who is a dear friend, and she's wonderful and she works hard. And thank you to Andrew and the leadership of the Forward Party for sticking with us in Virginia and joining us in these chats. Andrew, before we start our dialogue, let me set the table for my first question to you tonight. We're almost 100 days in now to the second Trump administration. The Pope just passed away. We have trade and tariff wars ongoing. The stock market is rocky. Retailers are worried. Tech executives are worried. Doge and Musk came in and they did a clean sweep of the government, wiping out longstanding agencies like USAID and others, firing government workers, cleaning the bench of that intellectual and seniority, that capacity that you need to have that continuity of government. They eliminated jobs. There's concern, particularly in a state like Virginia, where we have over 140,000 federal workers that reside in the Commonwealth. Beyond that, the executive branch has defied the courts, the judiciary branch. The Secretary of Defense is sharing classified information over signal chats with his wife, with his brother, and others. I could go on and on and on, Andrew, but I think you know where we are. That's the state of our republic right now. So my first question to you is this. First, Andrew, tell us a little bit about who you are. Tell us about how and why you founded the Forward Party. And then I'd like to get your thoughts on what I put out there, which is the state of our country right now, and what are we going to do about it?
Thank you, Sophia. Thank you, Chris. Thank you to the Forward Party Virginia team, and for everyone who's here. Yeah, it's a tough time in the country, Sophia. You listed some things that we're all familiar with. I certainly feel for the people of Virginia because the ground is shifting underneath your feet in terms of federal jobs, which are a very significant component of the regional economy. I dare say that very few people actually voted for this. like what did they vote for? And this to me is an emblem of the dysfunction of the two-party system on full display. Because if you rewind to last year, you had Trump running, and what was the biggest issue? Inflation. He was second issue was the border. You'd say those two, I think, were the huge opportunities for the Republican Party. The third big opportunity was that the Democrats completely failed the test. They backed up Joe Biden to run unopposed in their primary, and Americans noticed. I was joking that Democrats should change their name to something like the Selectors. Like if you're not going to have a vote, at least be honest about it. And Trump won on an agenda that, in my mind, included bringing prices down and closing the border. He did not win on tariffs and haphazardly chopping government capacity and a very inhumane, in my opinion, application of various rules around immigration, where you have really dark things happening. I know friends who have had friends go into hiding. There are a lot of people who won't visit the country now for fears that might seem a little bit unfounded or irrational. But at this point, some very strange things are happening in the country, so you almost can't blame them. In my opinion, we're seeing the excesses of this administration played out, and they had this opportunity because of really like the corrosion and disintegration in terms of their trust of politics as usual, the Democratic Party, institutions. It's why I started Forward, is because I came to the conviction that our two-party system was leading to very bad places, that we were going to wind up someplace like this, honestly. And now we're living it. The silver lining is that it's very hard for anyone to look at this and say, oh, this is fine, this is working well. And so I imagine that you all in Virginia are getting new interest and energies and inquiries, all the time, because people realize that politics as usual is not working. That's happening around the country. And I had that belief a number of years ago now, when we started Forward, and it's playing out even more dramatically than I would have predicted.
So let's dig a little bit deeper into that, Andrew. I remember fondly watching you on the Democratic National Committee debates when you were running for president of the United States, and you always had these great one-liners, and you always had a good sense of humor, and tried to kind of keep folks focused on the economic issues. And we talked a little bit about the impact of what's happening with the jobs. The federal contractors are dealing with lost contracts in the billions, and they're laying off folks, and you got car makers laying off folks. Let's dig into the economics a little. Give me a sense and give us a sense, Andrew, what is the Forward Party's philosophy, if you will, value system when it comes to economics, and how important that is for everybody in this country to share in prosperity and to have opportunity, and how addressing that or trying to get more information on that and learn more in order to better serve the American people in a way that we just discussed. The two-party system is failing grossly, in my opinion.
Yeah, this is my passion, Sophia, is trying to alleviate poverty and make the economy work better for people. To me, we have so many missed opportunities in terms of connecting folks to a better life. And by the way, in my opinion, the failure of the American dream is, again, what leads to extremism triumphing, including in this past election. I want everyone to imagine a world where there were 4 U.S. senators that were sort of in the middle. Then you would have had a very different set of confirmation hearings, because I know for a fact that a number of Republican senators were deeply uncomfortable with some of these cabinet appointees, but then they got calls from Trump and Musk saying, hey, if you do this, we're going to primary you. It's going to be the end of your career. And they backed down. There were a number of U.S. senators who capitulated, and Lisa Murkowski, who did not capitulate, recently came out with a statement saying, my colleagues are afraid, and I believe her. I don't think she's fabricating that. I think she's literally having conversations with them in private in the Republican cloakroom and whatnot, where they talk about, it's like, yeah, I'm not a Pete Hegseth fan, but, I don't want to get on the wrong side of the administration for this particular hill.
But Andrew, let me do an Oprah aha moment there. Let's stop there for a moment. We'll get back to the economics. What does that say about the state of where we are, that United States senators, very powerful individuals, 1 of 100, one individual, as you saw when Senator Van Hollen went down to El Salvador, one U.S. senator can put holds on nominations. Why didn't at least the 3 or 4 or 5 that were concerned about some of these nominees not use the tools available to them? The primary be damned. It's not about your job. It's about your citizenry, right? And the people you serve. Or am I wrong?
Well, you hope that you're right, Sophia. But in practice, there is a social dynamic and a hierarchy even within the Senate, where, who was his own person in the last term? Mitt Romney. And he had no one to eat with. I don't know if you read these stories by McKay Coppins in the Atlantic. Like, he was like the lonely kid in the cafeteria and whatnot. And you're like, Mitt Romney, really? Like, isn't he one of the most revered people? It's like, no. And so if you're a junior senator and you show up and you're like, I'm not sure about this appointee, you're getting pressure from all sides, including from the White House, saying, if you end up on our bad side on this, we're going to shorten your career very significantly. And some of the folks who are in that situation, you'd hope that they would vote their principal, because some of them weren't up for re-election anytime soon, and they could have thought, you know what, maybe you guys will forget about this by the time my election comes up. That's a very real consideration, by the way, Sophia. It's like, if you're up for re-election the next 2 years, then all of a sudden you're like, not going to touch a thing. And then 4 years, you get a bit more courageous. And then in this case, maybe even 6 more years, like you had a senator who's fresh. But they got the word. They got the word that we are going to drill you on this if you cross us. And I believe Senator Murkowski when she said it was fear.
Yeah, I want to circle back to the economics and the Forward Party's view on, how the country should, run our finances, how we engage voters around that. But to those of you who are joining us, I want you to hear what we're saying. There are no profiles in courage right now in the U.S. Senate or in the Congress. I think Andrew and I would agree on that, except for maybe 1 or 2 hiding, and Lisa's kind of sticking her hand up a little bit. But I think that, again, it's time for us to do something, Andrew. So back to the economics and the crazy we have going on right now, the tariff wars, the stock market is jumping all around. People have lost on average, 15% from their portfolios, depending on how aggressive you are, maybe more. What's the way forward on that, in your opinion, and in the values of the Forward Party?
Well, the Forward Party, in my mind, is exactly what's needed right now, Sophia. And our 3 pillars are dignity, dynamism, and democracy. And if you think about dignity and dynamism where the economy is concerned, we want things to work better, but we want people to actually be included in economic growth and success. And the way we get there is just by being very, very pragmatic and listening to the facts. It's one reason why I'm so furious about this entire Trump tariff trade war, because it's an ideological approach to the economy that's not going to work. It's actually going to do a ton of harm. And you can see that right now with Mack trucks and other manufacturers. Stellantis just saying, hey, we're going to have to fire hundreds of people because all of a sudden, like, our costs are higher and our exports are lower and our margins are going to be lower. And so we're looking around saying, I guess we're going to fire hundreds of manufacturing workers. If your intention with the tariffs was to try and increase hiring in the manufacturing industry, guess what? You're doing it wrong. Now Forward Party would be just very, very reality based, where we would look up and say to CEOs, okay, let's say we want you to invest in a manufacturing facility here at home. What's it going to take? And then give you visibility and a timeline, because the fact is it takes 2 to 3 years to get a factory up and running. And I talk to CEOs and they're like, if I'm going to spend 2 to 3 years building that factory, I need visibility for 6 to 10 years. And so, by the way, does anyone have confidence that they know what tariffs are going to be in like 6 weeks? Much less, like
6 days, right? 6 days.
Exactly. So the CEOs instead are taking their money and trying to disinvest or save it. It's having the opposite effect of what you'd hope. And Trump has a reputation as a business person, my opinion. He is on the other side of this issue and many other issues with 100 other CEOs and business people I know who would want the economy to work better for the average American family. And that's what Forward has to try and enable.
Yeah. Folks, commercial break here in the sense that please send your questions to the public chat, and Peter is going to moderate them. We already had some that were sent in, but we want to take a couple of your questions after Andrew and I finish, and then he's going to respond. You will have to put them in the public chat because no one's microphone works. We did that because there's way too many of you and it would be chaos, and we don't want that. So please go ahead, and if you're a member of the media and you haven't talked to me yet and you're on, just identify yourself, and we'll make sure to try to get to you, or I'll talk with you after. And if you need access to Andrew or something, we'll work on that together. So don't worry. Andrew, my last question to you, I think, is an important one, which is tell us how Forward is building in the 50 states What are you doing on the ground? How are we doing with candidate recruitment? Are we catching on, or are we just another third party that's going to fall by the wayside? Or is this a real moment coming up in the midterms next year, that 250th birthday of ours, that, of Thomas Jefferson's famous words, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights. Among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So we're going to celebrate that next July 4th. Where is Forward, and what role are we going to play in the midterms trying to get those 4 independent senators that you talked about, because we need them, and people in the House? What are we doing? How are we building, and where are we?
Well, thank you, Sophia. I think you're the person who called Forward the fastest growing political movement in the country, and the numbers bear it out. We're up to 52 elected officials now aligned with the Forward Party, and that doesn't include a couple people who are waiting in the wings. And I'm going to be meeting with a guy named Mike Duggan, who's the current mayor of Detroit, who's already declared himself an independent gubernatorial candidate for the state of Michigan. It's a very big deal. 2-term mayor of a majority minority city with a 65% approval rating. Why? Because he was endlessly pragmatic, get stuff done, clear out the obstacles and the red tape, don't make excuses. He came to the mayoralty of Detroit as a turnaround guy from the business environment. He was like a healthcare chain turnaround guy. So then he helped Detroit get on the straight and narrow, decided to run for governor of Michigan. And he said, look, I talked to Michigan voters and they don't think either party's it. So I'm going to be running this race as an independent. And Forward's going to by the way, he already signed the Forward Party pledge. So Forward and Mike Duggan are going to be teamed up. And imagine, I want you all to imagine if he's already polling in I believe the 20s. And so if he wins that seat, you'd have the governor of Michigan, a very important swing state, as one of the most prominent, maybe the most prominent independent in the entire country, who would either be kingmaker in the presidential or could turn around and run for president himself, though I'm sure he, right now is just trying to solve Michigan's problems. Right. But if the country were to look around and say, ooh, pragmatic, uniting or unifying governor of Michigan, it's like, I'd like to hear from that guy. And by the way, if you hear from Mike, you'd see that he's very sensible and compelling. So you have growth around the country. You probably all saw that a state senator in Utah turned in his Republican badge and said, I'm now Forward Party. And then as a result of that, we merged with the United Utah Party with Forward Utah. And so that's a sign of the fact that Forward is both growing and also bringing people together as a center of gravity. I will say to you all that what happened in Utah is going to happen in another state probably in the next 2 months, where we're actively talking. Now, obviously, don't want to mess with a delicate conversation or whatever, but we're going to be getting some more new friends in the next number of weeks. So you have growth in all of our metrics. You have outsized opportunities like Mayor Duggan running in Michigan. You have leaders like Lisa Murkowski hosting an event with and for Forward. And so I'm a huge Lisa Murkowski booster, and I would suggest that she's the closest thing we already have to one of these 4, because she's functionally an independent. She's already voted to impeach Trump. And
Susan Collins, depending on how the wind blows, but Susan Collins is kind of sort of there too.
Yeah. So, these 4 I speaketh of can be through recruitment and enlistment, and not necessarily having, Forward run a candidate. That's how a number of people are discovering us and joining us. And there are a lot of mayors around the country who are in technically nonpartisan positions who are tired of apologizing for Team Blue or Team Red, because they say, look, I have nothing to do with that stuff. I'm just trying to get the city working better and fill some potholes and get a sanitation contract. So wouldn't it be great if I can just listen to you all, the constituents of this community, and not whatever the heck is going on? So Forward is growing and growing and growing, and people are waking up. Now 50% of us say we're independent. It's probably even higher now, because the 2 parties are historically underwater by the numbers. Democrats, 29% approval rating. Underreported, Republicans not that far off, 36% approval. So, you're talking about a legit 2/3 of the country that is looking for something better.
Andrew, a circle back on that or follow up fundraising. So, we know about Citizens United. We know that there is, I think Kamala Harris just by herself raised $1 billion in the last cycle in 107 days. And Trump had to be close to that number as well. So you're talking $2 billion for the presidential race. You're talking, Senate races, $50 million or more. How do we compete with that as the Forward Party when the other guys have all the money locked up in the infrastructure? What do we do?
Well, we have to be clever and opportunistic, Sophia, and punch above our weight class. But there are outsized opportunities that resemble just that. And not to keep returning to it, because, by the way, he's not alone. There's someone else who might do something similar. But you take a figure like Mike Duggan. He has robust relationships and fundraising capacities of his own. So it's not like we have to raise all the money for him. You know what I mean? Like we get in and help. But I will say on his side, Mayor Duggan raises his hand, says, hey, I'm now an independent. Then he looks around and says, who are my friends? And then pretty quickly he discovers, Forward is the friend to sensible independent candidates like him. And so if we pile into the big opportunities where there are other resources, then we can contend and compete and win. And there are going to be other races that are closer to home where you just don't need like that much money because people actually know you and like you and respect you and are very happy to give you a fair hearing. So there are opportunities at every level. I will even suggest that I think there's going to be an opportunity in the presidential, either in 28 or 32. And if a candidate can make their case in front of the American people and say, look, guys, both teams, both parties have objectively failed you. We're going to do something differently. And you have a way to signal support. I think that that figure could get a ton of resources and energy pretty quickly. I even think that if you look at the $1 billion that Kamala raised and the, let's call it 800 million that Trump raised or whatnot, like what was that about? I mean, a lot of it was about fear and animosity toward the other side, my opinion. you know what I mean?
You're right. I think as we're getting ready to open it up now for questions.
Wait,
Sure.
Before you go, Sophia, I just wanted to say that I have donated $1,000 to Forward Party Virginia as like a small sign of
thank you. I appreciate that. And listen, that is, we all did too. Just so everybody knows, our entire state executive committee, we all wrote $1,000 checks as well because we believe leading by example. So Andrew, thank you for that. And folks, that brings me back to what Chris said. $20.26 in honor of the 250th sesquicentennial, or $25 a month, 250025, or $250 one time, because as Andrew has laid out, we do have momentum. The two-party system has failed this country. It has failed you and me and our 401ks, our retirement, our caregiving, all the things that real working people have to deal with day to day. And we can't compete. We can't help candidates run for the House or for the state Senate or the Congress or the U.S. Senate or president if they don't have money. Because money is the mother's milk of politics, and it always will be, as well as votes. So, Andrew, I guess as we're wrapping up, I want to give you the last word before we open it up for questions. What is it that you would like the people watching tonight and that will watch this over and over again on YouTube, et cetera, as it's shared and clipped? What do you want folks to take away about the Forward Party?
The Forward Party is the movement that the country needs that you've been looking for. And if you don't believe me, what I'd ask for you to do is reach out to someone in your state, especially if it's Virginia, since you can see some of the leaders are right here. And if you talk to them and meet with them, you'll see that they are the real deal. No one is joining Forward for anything but the best of reasons, because there's no other reason to do it. You know what I mean? Like I joke, Sophia, that if you're looking for like a fiefdom or some shine or some clout, you would have gone to one of the existing parties.
It's not here for sure.
Yeah. If you're here, the upside is that you're doing the right thing and you're around other people who are there for the right reasons. So please do step forward, reach out, whatever you're planning on doing, just do one step more than that. And make some new friends, make some new connections, take a look at the candidates who decide to step up and run. I'm not saying everyone here should run, but what I'm saying is that everyone here should support the folks that are building the Forward Party in Virginia and beyond, and definitely who are stepping up and running, because as someone who has run for office myself, they could really use your help. And every time you help them, then it makes them perk up and say, okay, people are seeing what I'm doing and understand why I'm running.
That's great. So Peter, before I have you read off a couple questions and let Andrew respond, could you please put up that QR code so that folks see it again in the public chat or wherever you need it, so that they can make a donation? And folks, again, the leadership has stepped up. You know, Mr. Yang has stepped up here, and we're leading by example. So, you know, this isn't church on Sunday where we're the pastor and we're like, come on and give me 10% of what you got. We're saying that we need you to build this grassroots movement, that it is garnering excitement and interest. You have politicians flipping who are tired of, you know, the dark rooms and the cloak rooms where they're told, if you don't do what we say, we're going to primary you or we're going to threaten your family. I mean, it's gotten really bad. And I know that running for office is not something fun anymore, that good people don't want any part of it. But we need good men to step up and good women to step up, because that's how we save our country. That's how we preserve this wonderful democracy, this great republic of ours that we love. All of us loves this country, and we love our Commonwealth, which is where the country began in 1607 as a colony. So please donate. And Andrew, let's do some questions now. Peter, the floor is yours.
Awesome. So first question here that was submitted a little bit earlier. What can the Forward Party do to slow down the Trump administration's dismantling of our democracy? How can we balance the current crisis with the long term?
It's a great question. It's top of mind for so many people. I'm going to describe to you what I've heard about what's happening at town halls for Democratic members of Congress. I think it's helpful. So constituents say, hey, what the heck are we going to do? And then the member says, we're going to sue them. We're going to slow them down in the courts. And then the constituents say, that's not good enough. And that's not you anyway, member of Congress. So what are we going to do? And then the member says, we're going to defeat them in the midterms next November. And the constituent shakes their head and says, no, that's too long from now. What are we going to do? And then the member says, oh my gosh, like that was my list. Like I don't have anything else. And so there's a lot of searching right now for answers, for questing. I agree that we have to be mindful of what's happening right now. But the things that you can do right now are relatively limited in scope. I think public demonstrations are in some ways positive because they show your discontent with what's happening. I think pressure on members of the Republican Party who are in swing districts, which might be in Virginia, to look like that is useful, because if some of those folks start elbowing their colleagues, being like, yo, I'm going to lose my job if we keep doing this, that they'll actually become emboldened to stand up to the administration on things like tariffs. So on tariffs, example, very concrete, 5 or 6 Republican senators have raised their hands and said, we don't think Trump should be in charge of tariffs because he's a disaster. And there is not a similar number of Republican House members who've taken the same step. And so if you happen to live in a district where they're your representative, you'd be like, hey, like really, really need you to stand up for your constituents on this one. And you got a few members of the House, that would be a very big deal. Members of the business community, also very useful. Like those are the gettable folks that used to comprise the moderate wing of the Republican Party that, in my opinion, could be the biggest difference makers. And that's who you should try and embolden. So those are the short-term moves. And then the long-term is trying to get a fulcrum in the Senate, fulcrum in the House, fulcrum in state houses. By the way, Forward now has 2 state senators in Pennsylvania, and that thing is almost so deadlocked that, you know, we might even have a fulcrum there. and then win at local races, where right now, if someone says, oh, Forward Party, and I tell them we have 52 elected officials, that almost always gives them like a jump, like, you do? Like, that's actually not bad. And then you look up and say, yeah, it's not bad. It's just going to keep going up and up. Let's say when that number is 250. So 500, 5,000, like at some point it becomes objective reality that there's a major third party in the United States of America just by the numbers. And it's not quick, it's not easy, it's not cost-free, to Sophia's point, but it's eminently doable. As a serial entrepreneur, I can see the path and the opportunity, and it's right there in front of us. By the way, it's also the biggest opportunity in more than a generation politically. I mean, if you just tap the average American on the shoulder and say, hey, how are you feeling about, this party or that party? They're like, oh, hate them. Like, you'll get that now literally 70% of the time.
That's right. Okay, next question, Peter. Another one.
All right, so this question is asking, how does the Forward Party address the identity politics that both the Democrats and Republicans have used to keep us all divided? This is not only affecting those who really need help and assistance, but is causing unnecessary hatred towards another, which is hurting our country.
Well, I'll use myself as an example. Why not? So I'm Asian, in case you guys didn't know. But I ran on and care about issues that affect every community and the country at large. I consider myself deeply fortunate that my parents decided to immigrate to this country. And so I think it's possible to be proud of your heritage and your community, but also emphasize being part of this bigger community. And we can appreciate the things that everyone's bringing to the table and acknowledge them without weaponizing them or using them to aggravate and inflame and divide either our community or the country. I think that's the balance most Americans want. Like, we don't have to pretend we can't, we don't have to pretend we don't come from somewhere, or don't pretend that we don't see that in each other. We also can acknowledge each other's differences or even miscommunications in a way that's courteous and respectful and assumes best intent, as opposed to saying, that you're somehow trying to put me on the outside looking in. I think that's what most Americans want, like not a willful obliviousness to identity, but that we're so much more than a particular category, and that America is both a country and an idea we all care deeply about, regardless of where we came from.
Yeah, I'd like to double down on that and just say, I think Andrew hit it perfectly. Part of this movement is we, the people, taking back common sense, basic pragmatism, like you said, and understanding that your neighbor's not your enemy. Somebody that's different than you is a person you can learn something from. Inclusion is always a good thing. Did they forget our founding motto, e pluribus unum, out of many, one? So we are better together. We have to build those bridges. And that's one of the things I love about Forward, Andrew, that one, our leadership is there's some amazing women in it. Christy Whitman, Carrie Healy, Lindsay, and then gentlemen like yourself and others. We're diverse, and the other parties aren't necessarily diverse at the top of their parties. And I think that Forward is building a really good movement. So thank you for that. Next question, Peter.
All right, this one's a little bit long, so I'm not going to leave it up for too long. But this question was really looking at, where does the Forward Party stand on people with developmental disabilities? I think this is kind of emblematic of a larger question about, what does the Forward Party stand for in terms of specific policies? We define a lot in terms of values, but other people want to see things that are a little bit more concrete than that. So if you could address both kind of the specific issue and then the Forward Party's approach to issue by issue as well. I'll just put that.
Well, thank you for the question. The first pillar of the Forward Party is dignity, which I think speaks to a lot of Americans. Many of you probably know that I have a son who's autistic, and so I am very, very familiar with a lot of the issues that various families face. I'm someone who wants to elevate people. I agree that the right now, I was talking to someone about their approach to some of these programs, and I disagree with it. I think that there's very much a place for government. But I also agree with the critique that sometimes the left is like somewhat paternalistic or kind of assumes less capacity. I think the Forward Party's sweet spot is to do what the government should be doing in terms of opening up opportunities and environments and educational programs, but do it in a way that includes each individual, each family, and says, look, what would help you? What would help in this situation? And have people at the table, hopefully making decisions on their own behalf. That's the other part of it with Forward is democracy, is that hopefully our government and the way it helps people actually reflects families and what they want for themselves, and not have someone else trying to make that decision for them.
Let me ask a follow-up there, and then Peter, you'll do one last question, and then we'll throw it back to Chris, and we'll wind down. We've got about 15 minutes or so left. Andrew, so Secretary of Health and Human Services, RFK Jr., made some comments recently about autism and the causes and about autistic children that really upset, rightly so, a lot of parents. Actress Holly Robinson Peete, you're married to football player Rodney Peete, a former NFL player. They have an autistic son who's grown now. You have one. What does it do when our leaders tear down instead of lift up and make ignorant comments like what he did about how autistic children will never contribute, do things? One, how did you feel about that as a dad? But how do we get rid of that that is very common in our politics right now, nastiness and meanness and running people down? How do we fix that?
As father of an autistic child, it was painful to see someone in that position of responsibility make comments that, in my opinion, just hurt families and tore at very, very difficult experiences that many families go through, and didn't help a single soul. You know what I mean? It's like, if you're going to head down a road, it's like, who's this helping? Why am I making this point? And it was hurtful and unnecessary and mean. And it was very, very unfortunate, especially because he's in a situation where he might be making decisions that affect many, many families who are in exactly that situation. I think that's something of a common theme in this administration, that there's like a harshness and an inhumaneness that is probably not, it's probably not going to go unreflected in their policies. You know what I mean? It's like, it's one reason, like, I'm someone who's like, look, if you misspeak, whatever, like, I'm not going to jump down your throat about it. But if you are in position to make policies, one, you have to be much more considerate in your statements. And number two, it raises very, very real fears and anxieties among many families. It's like, oh my gosh, this person's policies might not be trying to help me and my family, which is what you want in someone who's a cabinet level official presiding over a massive set of agencies that touch the lives of tens of millions of Americans.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I think that's a thoughtful answer, and I appreciate it. And sorry if that caused hurt to your family and to any of the other families out there. Just an awful thing for a leader of one of the cabinet agencies to say. Next question, Peter, final question. If there's any, okay, you got it. There you go.
Yep. All right. So this question comes from Madison Granger, one of our Virginia candidates from last cycle. Thanks, Madison. And so she asked about, our values are about building from the bottom up instead of top down, but there's a lot of drama and focus on the national level. So how do we get people engaged with the local level? And I would add to this, how do we convince them that the Forward Party is the best use of their time and treasure when There are established parties. There is an opposition party to the current administration. There's a lot of kind of civil service organizations that are doing good work about democracy. How do we get people engaged in our bottom-up strategy with the Forward Party?
Well, first, Madison, thank you for running. I know it takes a lot of courage and energy. I'm sure you grew a lot and met a lot of great people, but that there were times that were quite difficult. And I actually think, Madison, that you are the answer in the sense that my experience, people respond most to other people. And if you decide to run for something that's a very significant commitment, so other people look at you and say, huh, you don't seem crazy. Like who are you and why are you running? And like, let me hear a little bit more. I think that's how you get energy and interest and focus. I think it's fine to opine about national issues if you have a point of view. It's fine. I mean, 9 times out of 10 they'll probably agree with you because that's probably a common sense point of view. But by the numbers, the Democrats will be a structural minority party and an ineffective resistance on the legislative front because they cannot get a majority in the U.S. Senate back for the next, pick a number, 12, 18, 24, 200 years. And Sophia's nodding, but if you're someone who's savvy to politics, you know that 4 Democratic senators are retiring rather than run for re-election, that they're down 53-47 now and just lost seats in Ohio and West Virginia, which they will never see again. And the majority of the states are red. So the Democratic Party cannot have the pendulum swing back in their favor such that they have control of all 3 branches of government again. It's mathematically impossible from the numbers guy. So Madison, this is kind of a sophisticated answer to the question. It's like, hey, why should I care? It's like, you should care if you want our political system to work in any real way, because right now, if you have competition in the US Senate, which you functionally do not, then we're going to be stuck. So if you want us to be unstuck, you have to back a third movement in American politics that can create competition in places like Nebraska, where Dan Osborne got 47% in November, or Alaska, where who knows, maybe a senator decides to, change her registration, or Kansas, or places that the Democrats cannot touch. And that's one frustration I have with the Democratic Party. I have a number of frustrations, you can all imagine. But like where there's this outpouring of energy, I say, where was it 15 months ago when it might have actually done some good? If you'd stood there and said, Joe Biden, you need to allow a real primary because you're going to deliver us into the hands of Trump, which was fairly predictable, by the way. If you kept your mouth shut then I have much lower inclination to listen to you now, because that was when your party actually could have met the moment and it didn't. And a lot of the people who are the loudest right now were at the time defending Joe Biden and his commandeering of the party.
And Andrew, the Osborne race in Nebraska is fascinating. I know Deb Fisher well, and it's a very red state, and the Democrats don't even try to run there, which is why Osborne
they didn't want a candidate.
So there was no Democratic candidate, so they nominated. He ran, but then the Democrats basically backed him there, whatever infrastructure there was, and he came very, 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 very close. But Nebraska's very red. And so, what's interesting is I think Andrew's point was really proved very well in that Nebraska race, that there are states where there is zero competition. And if my friend Nick Troiano was on here from Unite America, he would get into this whole primary problem and ranked choice voting. And I know that Forward's been very vigorously engaged. And I know Madison has an event coming up in Arlington, another ranked choice voting, the movie Majority Rules. So please go to our website, support that, and show up if you're in that area. But Andrew, thank you for answering our questions. We will have some media follow-up, but you and I will take care of that offline. We had a number of interested reporters, national and regional, but they had commitments tonight, so they'll watch the replay, and then we will definitely talk with them. But I want to thank everybody for being with us, and I'm going to throw this back to Chris in a moment, but remind you that This isn't just a conversation Andrew and I are having. This is a movement to save this country. We are in a very serious moment, very serious. And I think enough of us are not paying attention to the guardrails that have come off. We're watching things unravel, and I think many of us feel helpless. Like, what can I do? And I hope that something that Andrew and I have said tonight get you inspired, get you fired up, and you want to come out and volunteer and donate and contribute and get a chapter started in your county or in your congressional district, because we need 10 of them. And we have 10 congressional districts here in the Commonwealth. But get involved, because this is your country and your kids' country and your grandkids' country, and we have to fight for it. So, Andrew, thank you. And Chris, I'm going to throw it back to you.
Thank you, Sophia. Thank you very much. And thank you for a great conversation. And Andrew, thank you for your time and joining us. This was a great discussion, and I think it got to a lot of the main points that we're working on here. A lot of the comments spoke to questions about how do we do this at the state level. Let me just share an anecdote. Madison Granger's name was already mentioned. She's on this call and she's been in the comments. Our plan for Madison last year was to make sure, because we had ranked choice voting in her race in Arlington County. And our goal was to make sure that the Democrat, for those that don't live near Arlington, it is a one-party town, and it has been for as long as I've lived there, for decades. And the goal was to hold the Democrat under 50%, so we could deploy the ranked choice component and get to that counting. And where we had the wherewithal, the people and the money to get the message out for her to go door to door, to get paper handed out, to do texting. That strategy succeeded extremely well in the precincts where we had time and ability to cover it. But we didn't have enough money. I ran into a lot of voters in the closing stages who said, I wish that we knew. I wish that we knew. We would have voted for her for sure. So that's the point. That's what we need to do. That's what the money goes for. We hope to have a number of candidates here in Virginia we're going to be announcing soon. For all of the interest on how we do this, go onto our website, come to one of the events. Sophia mentioned the upcoming event that we're going to be having, the screening of a great documentary about the state of our democracy. We have established a Northern Virginia monthly meeting. There are monthly statewide meetings online. Come sign up for one of those, join one of those, let us know. And we will plug you in any way you want to be plugged in. You can be a candidate. You can be a volunteer for candidates. You can help us with this fundraising. We need to do a lot more of that. There's no shortage of hands. And Andrew spoke to this. The point is, we've got to build momentum and we've got to turn this into a movement. That's what we need to do. And we do that by engaging people one-on-one, as he was referencing. It's exactly what we saw happen in the campaigns last year. And the ones we had time and attention for and resources for, we were very successful. So please, let me thank the people who have already indicated that they've contributed tonight. We really appreciate that. That's where we're going to go. Stay in touch with us. Make sure you're talking to us. We really want to build this movement in Virginia. And I look forward to working with every interested Virginian, as do everybody, as does everyone in the Virginia Forward Party. The last thing I'll mention is that there's a way to become an official member of Virginia, and so there's a QR code for that as well. Go onto the website and become an official member if you haven't. We're going to use that official membership to guide what happens in Virginia. So if you have an opinion about the right way for us to do this, the people who should be candidates, the way that we should get our message out, that's the way to do it. So come and join us and bring your friends. We know that there are a lot of people in Virginia, as there are around the country, who are frustrated with what's going on and we can make a difference, but we have to do that together. We have to join together. So please join us, and we can do that together. So thank you all for joining us tonight. Join us again next month. We'll have another fireside chat. Join us in any of the meetings that are listed online, and let's go forward together. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great evening.